Shut up and sit down.
I'm Alex Valtrades, and this is the pre-watch thoughts for Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. So I'm dreading this one a little bit. I saw the first one in movie theaters when it came out on a bad date. Unlike some people, when I go to a concert or a movie for a date, I watch the concert or movie. I may not always be the one paying, but I am still there for that experience, not a makeout session, which I could do elsewhere. I had been excited for Sin City, but all the narration was hard to sit through. The artistic style was great, but that was just Frank Miller's art style on screen. I told everyone I knew that the movie was only good to watch on mute, because most of the voiceover acting was terrible, mainly because the four characters doing narration had about the same way of talking. I think this was a combination of bad writing and bad acting and bad direction. More bad writing than acting though, because a lot of those lines were horrible and repetitive. I also almost lost it laughing in the theater when Elijah Wood was jumping around like a maniac, as if Frodo is somehow a melee badass. My date confused him for Tobey Maguire and pointed out that I couldn't help laughing at his Spider-Man antics. I know that some of you will think I hate comic books because at this point I've given out a lot of bad scores for comic book adaptations, but the truth is I love comic books. I love the crazy soap opera on steroids with superpowers style. I even read manga and watch anime because I don't believe a work's medium or genre precludes its quality. There can be genius in visual storytelling. It's why I love movies. But my real issue with adaptations is that not every story can be told in film or TV. Not every great story is capable of transcending their original medium, and adaptations have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. They have to play to the strengths of the new medium without ruining the tone or themes of the original work. But sometimes the tone and themes of the original work are couched in the techniques of the original medium. It is true, however, that a bad director can ruin an adaptation, especially when the original work is in a medium already incredibly close to the adaptation medium. But I have seen adaptations that were really good, like Doctor Strange or The Dark Knight, or how about nearly all of the DCAU? Hollywood thinks that comic books are easy to adapt because they are already pretty much storyboarded, but then they take a closer look at the story and freak out because they are typically so crazy with too many characters and way too many weird sexual things going on. The Sin City series gives them a bit of a break by making it clear that these are not for kids, though kids read all of this stuff and their parents don't even know what's depicted in them, even though Miller made it very clear these stories were for adults by putting a half-naked stripper on the spines. So the studio realized they could make these 2 movies R-rated without trying too hard to appeal to the youngins. But that is what happens when you get Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino together. Luckily, the sequel is also rated R, which means at the very least I might expect some nudity again. This time though, Quentin Tarantino is not really involved, which is sad because he really does know how to create a compelling story. Instead, we just have Rodriguez and Miller. Rodriguez's late 90s work is my favorite, such as The Faculty and Desperado. I've never been able to sit through El Mariachi or Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Frank Miller is famous for Sin City and 300, but all I remember is that he wrote RoboCop 3 along with 2 other writers. His best work is his Batman comic book writing. Mickey Rourke and Jessica Alba are back. I've never understood why everyone loves Rourke, though he is good in The Wrestler. Alba is so blah in everything. I've always liked Dawson, Willis, Green, and Booth, but Gordon-Levitt is either great or meh. I like Brolin in Hail Caesar, but geez, don't redo Old Boy. Come on, man. That movie does not need a Western remake. As you can tell, I'm so freaking excited by Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, and it came out way too long after its predecessor for anyone but die-hard fans to really notice. That's why I'm only seeing it now. I don't really imagine that it's going to be all that good. this is the PostView review for Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. Well, that was a lot of boobs, but pretty much all the same boobs and pretty much just boobs. If you don't like a showcase of the female form, this movie really isn't for you. Eva Green is awesome in so many ways, and she brings that to Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, as she has in basically all her other titles. Other actresses in this movie, however, do less well, and apparently the makers of Sin City: A Dame to Kill For and Hollywood have more hang-ups over the male form than they do the female one. The narration, again, sucks. And while one storyline is just annoying, the other is problematic. And I actually forgot about the third one. The main characters are not empathetic either. So I'm suggesting a new title for this movie, Eva Green's Awesome Tit Show. And when people say, oh, I'm good, I've seen Eva Green movies before, we can read the subtitle. This time in black and white. She is almost or nearly topless in every scene she's in. And hear me out, because I'm not complaining. Eva Green's attitude about the female body and female sexuality is both empowering and healthy. She's not being objectified. She is rocking a great body and is using it to its full advantage. I really respect that. She's one of the few women in Hollywood who dominates whatever she's in and often uses her sex appeal to do it while smashing prudishness to dust. I love her for it. One could argue that she's always the femme fatale, but Green's got a great evil voice and face. But I've seen her do great vulnerability as well, such as how she flips between the two on a near constant basis in the first season of Penny Dreadful. So I think her parts tend to be more complex than that. I wouldn't have had an issue with her not showing her breasts in most of her scenes either, with the exception of the sex scenes. Green was also the best actor in the movie. I swear I was laughing while she was maneuvering Maloney because I'm pretty sure she found it amusing too, because it was so easy. Jessica Alba in the Sin City movies as Nancy, on the other hand, I find extremely offensive because she should be at least topless in most of her scenes because she's a goddamn stripper. Nancy's breasts feature on the spines of the series. I mean, come on, don't play the stripper if you're not willing to get at least semi-nude, Alba. Alba is doing more harm to the reality of the movie and to the social acceptance of female sexuality than Green is in this movie. There is nothing shameful in the female body or female sexuality. People who argue that breasts are not sexual don't help things either because they are an erogenous zone. So they are a part of female sexuality, just not necessarily a part of the act of sex itself. I want more female sexuality in my movies, not less. I want empowered women enjoying sex and being comfortable asking for it or even being assertive about it. Prudishness disguised as feminism to stop objectification is still an archaic and unjustified stance. Feminism should always be about options, i.e. freedom. The freedom to show one's breasts and the freedom not to. Duh! It's not that hard. To further the subject of nudity in films, we have a severe lack of cock and balls going on where we should be seeing it. Yeah, I believe that Josh Brolin landed out the window at the perfect angle to obscure his jingle jangles, as opposed to him wearing underwear and them CGIing the area in post. Sure. I'm not saying that the penis and testicles are a to die for sight, but they are a natural part of men's anatomy, and it would be nice if we could stop the bullshit that they are somehow terrifying or unseemly. Get over your tackle fear. Show the meat popsicle and berries in all their glory. It's so rare that people see the man junk in film and TV because women find it offensive or scary, and men mostly find it off-putting, so that the only time most people see it is in porn or in person or on HBO. Stop hiding that under a bushel. YouTube gives a big finger to sexuality in general and all sex organs because they are apparently widow old ladies too busy with their crochet to think straight. We're so afraid to show these things to minors too, as if they don't also have sex organs, and making sexual organs and sex taboo subjects for kids only creates confused and conflicted adults. They either end up knowing knowing too little or too much because they get their information from extreme sources, but pretty much always end up with distortions about sex and sexuality. I say we show them a graduated wide variety of sexual organs and sex acts as they grow up to make them more comfortable with their own bodies and intimacy. Hollywood is a part of the issue, and Sin City, A Dame to Kill For works in half measures, both for and against this idea. Ava Green is doing her part to show women that their bodies are beautiful and powerful and that sex isn't nasty but fun. Alba is doing her part to show that stripping and female sexuality is dirty and shameful, especially if it is used for money. Brolin is doing his part to say it's okay to be afraid of or put off by male sex organs. Hooray! 1 out of 3 ain't too bad. The story structure was again too broken by the source material, and while I was pleased that we finally got a non-white male narrator, I wanted Nancy to shut up just as much as all the other narrators, which I suppose makes them equally bad, but equal nonetheless. I really didn't care about Nancy's story at all. It was so dumb. It sounds like it should be compelling, but coming off of what Hartigan gave up for her to have a life, she seems ungrateful. I know it is also realistic, but it is actually really boring to watch a person self-destruct like that, especially once she becomes manipulative. I'll admit that I completely forgot Johnny's storyline entirely. Like, in my head, Sin City, A Dame to Kill For had 2 stories, Nancy and Dwight. In reality, it has 3 because Johnny didn't make any kind of impression on me. Not a good sign. I kept hearing the Allstate insurance slogans in my head. And sorry, Dennis Haysbert, but that will forever be in my head when you act now. Hollywood, stop teasing me by casting Martin Chokash in minor roles. Especially stop cutting him from the movie entirely. You'd be amazed at how many theatrical releases he's been cut from. This man is a brilliant actor. I know his name is hard to spell, and I know you don't know how to pronounce it, but that's no excuse, Hollywood. Now I'm going to talk spoilers, so skip ahead to get my rating. Also, Chokash doesn't always have to be the bad guy or the fake out bad guy. The whole deal with Dwight being both Josh Brolin pre-plastic surgery and Josh Brolin and Clive Owen post-plastic surgery is awkward. They both wanted and didn't want to get Clive Owen for the post-plastic surgery scenes, but the issue is unsolvable. It's weird for the world of the movie that it isn't Clive Owen post-surgery, but it's weird for Sin City, A Dame to Kill For as a movie for it to be Clive Owen post-surgery. It's the whole idea. It's one that works in a comic book but fails in a movie, especially a franchise. Now, yes, characters change actors all the time. Rhodes in the MCU, Batman in the 90s Batman movies, not to mention Harvey Dent, and there are all the fucking James Bonds that exist that are all somehow in the same world with the same other actors, only for them to swap out later too. Fucking weird. But the difference in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For is that we have an in-story face change. I'm not saying that the other instances I mentioned are okay. They're actually worse. There's no answer for them. But here, in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, we have an answer. But how do you follow Dwight's story in this context if he literally changes faces in a single movie? But at the same time, it looks pretty damn stupid to say his face is different when it very clearly isn't, especially when we have a pre-existing idea of what his face is supposed to look like. It just don't work. You don't have to agree with me, and I'm sure some of you don't, but my suspension of disbelief is actually pretty low for movies. And Sin City already established what Dwight looked like post-surgery, and Josh Brolin, with some shitty latex on his face, is a pretty poor replacement for Clive Owen. Seeing how Dwight repeatedly mistreats my girl Gail in both Sin City and previously in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For really makes me not like him. I'd rather Ava Green eat his fucking heart out than him come near Gail again. Oh, when he's in the suck, Gail's worth his time, but when he's no longer in danger, Gail's back on the street and he goes off to bang Brittany Murphy. Oh, poor Brittany Murphy. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For is quite the sequel. It stands up to what the first one did. Suck in a beautiful fashion. I'm not entirely certain how this movie got made, except to say Ava Green was willing to get nude for most of it. And that sells. I get why it sells. Ava Green has a nice body. But it's not really enough to hold up an entire movie, even with all it does for promotion of female sexuality. While Sin City: A Dame to Kill For is tighter than Sin City, one story is insufferable and the other is problematic, and both have unlikable protagonists. And the third, it turns out, is pretty forgettable. As such, it only earns a 5 out of 10 from me. Watch it for the tits and Green's awesome performance, but otherwise skip it. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, a dickless film. This was PostView Review, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe, click that bell, leave a comment below, visit my blog at empatheticwriter.wordpress.com, and follow me on Patreon for exclusive content and a shout out on a video. Merch, 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 merch. Yeah. Check out my new shop at cafepress.com/AlexofAllTrades for all kinds of products with my face on them.